Hi, good evening. My name is Noémie Berlus. I am president of the Quebec Association for Home-Based Education. In French, we call it AQED, l'Association québécoise pour l'éducation à domicile. Today I'm going to talk to you about our guide that we just created. Our suggestions guide for homeschooling parents in Quebec. So I'm going to start off by talking quickly about our association and what we do, and then I will get into the guide and how you can use it to prepare your education projects, your learning project, your reports, and everything that you need to do to get to address the new law, as you are homeschooling with your children this year and the following years. So first of all, let me talk to you about AQED. AQED is an association that's 100% run by volunteers. We are all homeschoolers or ex-homeschoolers, we're about 50 to 60 people who work and who donate their time to the extent that they can, and we work together to try to make things better for homeschoolers in Quebec. The association's goals are to represent families, homeschooling families, with the Minister of Education, with Youth Protection Services, or any other governmental agencies that you have to deal with. We are here to inform provide information to homeschooling parents about homeschooling in Quebec, provide support for families who are homeschooling. To do that, we have 600 members in our association. Homeschooling, that's 600 member families, so with over 2,000 children. We provide legal services, so we have two lawyers, one of whom is first language anglophone, so she's more comfortable working in English than in French. We have paralegals, and all of these people are specialized in Quebec law. We don't do anything for their common law. So all of the other provinces, everywhere else in Canada, they use common law. But here in Quebec, it's civil law, and our lawyers are all trained in Quebec to do civil law cases. We have many volunteers who will answer your questions about homeschooling in general. So we don't just do the legal side, but we also provide support about homeschooling, how to start, what to do when you hit high school, any kind of questions you have about homeschooling. Either our volunteers on the phone will have an answer for you, or they'll find the answer or give you ways that you can find the answer yourself. We offer conferences, so we're going to have our first conference that will be bilingual this year. We used to be a bilingual organization way back when we started in 1997. We celebrated our 20th year last year, but over time it became more of a French organization. Well, we're trying to switch that back and become more of a bilingual organization. So for the first year in many years, our conference in Montreal, September 22nd and 23rd, we will have anglophone speakers. So we will have at least 3 conferences at every time slot that will be in English. We'll probably have at least 10 conferences in French and then 3 conferences in English. So if you're bilingual, you have your pick of conferences. And we do information sessions. So if you have a support group or just a group of families that are interested in learning more about the law, about how to start homeschooling, or anything that related to homeschooling, you can contact us, and we'll be happy to come to your organization and provide our insights. We answer about 700 to 1,000 questions per year. Our question, that's on by email or by phone. We answer countless questions online. Most of the questions that you will see, asked on our Facebook group. So we have a general Facebook group in French. We have a general Facebook group in English, and we have a Facebook group that is specific to our members. So the people who are the most committed to homeschooling, who've decided to invest in supporting their association. We have a couple hundred people who are on a specific Facebook group. It's a bilingual group. Mostly we speak in French, but we'll answer in English if someone writes in English, and we speak franglais. So if you want to join, or if you are a member of AQED, make sure that you are a member of the AQED members group. It's not the same as the anglophone group that you probably are all part of. And so on those groups, we answer tons of questions. We've stopped trying to calculate how many. It far outnumbers the number of questions that we answer by phone. The 700 to 1,000 questions that we answer by phone and by email. So before I start with the law, there's a couple of things I want to let you know. One is I am not a lawyer myself. We have spent countless hours talking to lawyers and paralegals, to the minister, to the MNAs. We went to the parliamentary commission. AQED was at every parliamentary commission that spoke about topics that talked about homeschooling. We were camping out in Quebec City a year ago when they were voting on these laws or debating these laws, and we were talking to the MNAs in between sessions and trying to tell them about what homeschooling was about and trying to convince them to change their positions. And so we have the input of a lot of people in the process. We've spoken to all of the major associations in Quebec. We have looked at what's being done in other jurisdictions in Canada. And so we've created a guide that reflects what we feel is the best interpretation that will best benefit families. So the best interpretation of the law and the regulations. But what's important for you to know is until the laws are implemented and we actually start using them, and there starts to be conflicts, and those conflicts go in front of a judge, until a judge says what the right interpretation of the law is, there is no correct interpretation of the law. Even the minister might have had something in mind when he wrote something down, but a judge will not try to decipher what the minister had in mind. The judge will look at the words on the paper and interpret the law based on what's written on that piece of paper. So once the law is written down and the regulation is written down, everybody's interpretation is fair game, and we'll only know who's right once it goes to a lawyer, to a judge at some point, and the judge decides yay or nay. Hi, Rochelle. I'm looking forward to it too. You'll hear a lot of different interpretations. People have different opinions. The best that we can do is try to compare notes with other associations and get some input from different lawyers, and try to get input from what is best practice, what we see elsewhere, and try to get the interpretation that we want. And so this is one of the main things I want you to understand with this guide is, and that's why we talk about a suggestions guide. We don't know the answer. We don't know the perfect answer. What we've tried to decipher is, what is it that we can interpret out of the law and the regulation that will best benefit families? So the interpretation that we put there is one that we feel will benefit the most homeschoolers in Quebec. And this is the interpretation we hope will pass and will go through. And the more of us who interpret it similarly, and the more of us who act similarly with the information that we have in the law and the regulation, the more likely that we will convince, just by the force of numbers, the minister and all the other actors to interpret the law the same way. And this is something that the paralegals and the folks at the minister's office said to us. They said, regulations are not perfect. They never are. They never are when they first get published. But this is the process of the law and the process of democracy. As a regulation is used, then the government changes it to reflect the usage. So if we limit ourselves to what we absolutely think is the most safe thing to do at this point, then that is how the regulation will be reinforced and interpreted and published in the future. The most conservative and safe option will be the one that the government will say is the right one. If we fill out the paperwork and we show the diversity and the truth of what homeschooling is, and that when the regulation as it is doesn't really work, and we kind of sidestep it, or we say, you know, like, I'm going to put this instead of exactly what it says in the regulation, then as we move forward, as the government receives those documents and sees that the regulation doesn't quite work for this, they will adapt the regulation over time to reflect the reality. And as they see that our kids are fine and they're doing great, even if we can't put something like the exact approximate time that we plan to spend per week, they may become more, more relaxed about providing that information in the future. So the guide is based both on what we think is, um, what a reasonable interpretation of the law is, and we are also trying to interpret it in a way that will most benefit families and will most allow the wide diversity of homeschooling practices. As long as the kids are fine and they're progressing and they're doing well, then, we shouldn't be nitpicking about details and differences between families. So that's what we tried to do with this guide. If you like our approach and you like what we're trying to do, then it would be great if you tried to follow along with what we're suggesting in the guide. You don't have to follow the guide step by step, absolutely everything that's in there. We try to communicate a lot of the principles. So, it's okay if you don't want to do a 2-page grid, because you're not a grid kind of, Cartesian kind of person. If you want a free flow, free write, learning project, but that's fine. But what we're telling you is keep it short, keep the language simple, and don't put more than what the government requests, as a minimal in the law. But whether you do it in grid form or in something else, you're still being a team player and helping us out, because you've respected the strategy that we are recommending that all families follow, which is to keep the minimum amount of information required to respect the law. So don't get stressed if you change a box, if you change something in one of our documents. This is not a legal document. It doesn't have any force of law. It doesn't have any more force of law than what your neighbor suggests you should do. It's up to you to make your mind up as to what sources of information you want to take. But we highly recommend that you follow the principles that we have in our guide if you want to help move the law and the regulations towards something that will be respectful of families. So that was my first thing. The second thing I wanted to talk to about was if there's any new people who are listening today. It is a very stressful time. I realize it. I know that a lot of new people are very confused about the law and very confused about some of the maybe I don't know if I should call it. No, I'll say concern that people have expressed about the new law. I would tell you not to worry. Follow the instructions in the guide. Don't worry about all of the details of the strategy and all that. I'm talking to people who have experienced the process before, because the process before with the school boards was a lot more work for the families that were registered with many school boards. They were asked a lot more stuff. So I'm spending a lot of time talking to people saying, keep it simple, because they're used to doing 30 or 40-page learning portfolios and 10-page learning plans. So I'm going to be spending a lot of time telling people keep things simple. But if you're new to this and you don't have that past baggage, just follow the guide, do your best, and if you have any questions or need any help, AQED is there. We'll be happy to help you. So that's that. Okay, so what I'm planning to do is just go over the guide in general, and then if you have any questions at the end, I'm going to stay as long as you want to answer all of your questions, but don't feel like you have to listen to the whole thing. Those of you who've listened to the Facebook Live I did before when the regulations just came out, much of the interpretations that we've put in here have stayed very similar. So if you've seen the first Facebook Live that I did in English when the regulations came out, feel free to just read the guide and do it based on that. You don't need to listen to whatever link this Facebook Live will be. All right, so I wanted to start off with I'll start off with just the context. So I've talked about the fact that we did a lot of representation in front of the minister and the MNAs to talk to them about the reality of homeschooling. There has been a lot of prejudice and people don't understand homeschooling. I think we've taught them a lot, but there's still a lot of people that need to learn. And so it's important that that we stick together, and that we take the time to teach people and get them to learn more about homeschooling. But it's important that we don't give up on our basic rights, and it's important that we don't, because of their ignorance, concede to doing things that are unreasonable and that are a burden to our families, just to make, you know, people who don't understand the reality of homeschooling, you know, comfortable. If you have problems in this process, don't hesitate to contact us. We are planning on being very proactive with any government representatives. If there are problems, we want to know if it's going well. We want to know. We want to understand how things are going. So we will be asking you to, if you like, to share some of the material that you're sending, some of the material you're getting, the feedback that you're getting, so that we can keep track of where, you know, what government representatives are doing a good job, what government representatives need some prompting or some advice, and we'll go meet them if we have to, and teach them a little bit more so that they can do a better job. So we want to make sure that the community sticks together and that we will help each other out. And AQED is working with the other associations. We're working with HSLDA, with ACPEC, with ISM, with the AGEM, the Jewish associations. We're working together to make sure that this new process will work for all of us. Okay, so some people tell me, like, well, you don't have to worry as long as you follow what the government says. And usually these are new people. In the past, it has been very tense for some families with some school boards who were not trained, who didn't know how homeschooling worked, and who would ask things that were unreasonable and that were much more burdensome than some of the other school boards. So there was a huge disparity between what different school boards did. You know, sometimes school boards would call youth protection services as soon as they learned that a family was homeschooling. It was a big mess. If you want to learn more about the big mess, we have our submission that we've sent to we sent many submissions throughout the legal process of changing the law, and that material is on our website, and you can read more about the history of this this action and why we're here and why we care so much about making sure everybody's sticking together. Okay, so what you need to know before you start: you can homeschool whichever way you like. Okay, so unschoolers, you don't have to worry. You don't have to change the way you educate your children, the way you learn with your children. What you do have to do is change the documentation. And we'll be giving you tricks throughout this live to tell you how to document different things, so that you can continue educating your children the way you think is best. As long as you follow the elements in this regulation and in the law, you can use whatever approach that you like. So people ask me if unschooling is legal or not. There's no educational approach that is illegal. You just have to show certain things. Okay. If you want to follow the program, that's fine too. But you need to decide whether you want to follow the program to the letter and have the minister or their representatives, you know, pointing out things that you didn't do right. If you want to have kind of like constant feedback and have to do the exams and get feedback on those exams and really follow the program very, very closely, then you can reach out to the minister or the minister's office and ask them to help you do your learning project, and help guide you through the process. You can use our guide in any case, but we're just not sure about all the details of what following the program entails. And so the best source of information, if you want to have that detailed feedback, is asking the minister to help you with your learning project. If you want to follow the program, but you don't want necessarily someone to be, giving you feedback on every single thing that you're doing, and you don't want to do the exams. If you just want to do the Quebec program on your own in your own way, then we encourage you to, when you're communicating to the minister, that you say that you are going to be implementing a program that is inspired by the Quebec program. So that means you're not trying to actually implement the whole program completely, with the exams and all of that, but you're going to be inspired from it. So you're going to take whatever you want, and you're going to do it the way you want, and then and you'll have more flexibility. So that's, and in that case, if you're following the program but you don't necessarily want to be told exactly how to do it, and you don't want to be given feedback on the details of it, then you can use this guide as well. Okay, so to be okay with the law, there are 6 things that you have to do throughout the year. I'm going to go through those 6 things, and then I'm going to go through the general recommendations, and after that, I'm just going to answer questions, because the details of the 6 items are in the appendices. You can go look at them, so I'm not going to go through them because it's going to be way too long. But I'll go at a high level over the 6 items, and then after that, if you want to stick around and if you have a specific question, I'll be happy to answer it. So the first thing you have to do before September 1st this year, but every following year it'll be before July 1st. Before September 1st, you have to send in a notice, a homeschooling notice, to the Minister of Education and to your school board. So you to know which school board is your school board, it would be the Francophone school board on your territory, unless you have eligibility to send your child to an English school board, in which case you can send the notice to the English school board. The notice is the only thing that you are legally required to send to the school board. Anything else, you need to decide that you want to have the communications with the school board before anything happens. So you send a notice to the French school board unless you have eligibility to go to the English school board, in which case you can send a notice to the English school board. After that, you don't have to talk to them again unless you want to. The second thing that you need to do is you need to send a learning project in by September 30th of the year. Now, the dates that I'm telling you will change if you're starting homeschooling in the middle of the year. If you start homeschooling after September 1st this year, the dates and deadlines change. I'm not going to talk about them because I'm assuming if you're listening to this in the middle of July, it's that you're not going to wait until the middle of the year to pull your child out. If you're interested in the deadlines, if you're homeschooling in the middle, if you start homeschooling in the middle of the year, go through the guide and you'll see the deadlines are noted in the document as well. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to call AQED. We do have anglophone support staff ready to answer your calls or your emails. Okay, so so the learning project, the key insight I want to share here is that it differs from the learning plan. So for those who had to deal with homeschool with school boards in the past, they would often ask for a learning plan. A learning plan is a detailed document that explains everything that you plan on doing. However, the terminology has been changed, and that change is very significant, and it was intentional. The minister no longer wants learning plans. They want a learning project. And a project is like, okay, today I'm going to go, this summer I'm going to go to Florida to see grandma, and we're going to go to, Walt Disney World. Okay, that's a project. A plan is, okay, July 1st, we're going to get on airplane, Air Canada XYZ. We're going to land July 1st in the evening, and we're going to get a taxi to pick us up, and then it's going to drive us to grandma's, and she'll have supper ready, and then that's what a plan is. That's what we used to have to do. Now, when we show the guide and what the government is expecting, and we've talked to them about this, they know that we are telling people that we are expecting, that we think they're expecting a 2-page plan, and they haven't told us that we were wrong. So and the other associations are also recommending the same thing based on the same meetings that we've had. So that's why I'm saying keep things simple. I don't, whether you do it in a grid format, whether you do like what we showed, or whether you do a free-flowing explanation that includes all of the things that need to be in the learning project, you don't need to put every detail of what you're going to do, and you don't even need to put everything that you will do. You need to put the minimum required by the law. So even if you plan on doing, geography, history, and citizenship, you would only need to put activities related to one of those, and that's what we would recommend, because the more you put, the more you can get nitpicked on. It's the same principle as when you go through customs. You don't sit there and talk to the customs officer about the 150 things that you did on your during your vacation. You answer the question and you move on. And that's what any lawyer will tell you. Same thing, your accountant, when you have to do, like, these are government transactions. When you have to do a government transaction, you do not send to the government the whole list of all the things you did in your company this year. No, you send the pertinent information, which is, here's the tax information, here are the things you need to know. The rest, sure, we're doing it, but you don't need to know all this. And that's the same kind of mentality you need to have here. The less you say, the less you can get nitpicked on. The more general you are, the less you have to communicate if there are any changes. So that's what you kind of have to be thinking about when you're doing your learning project. The status and midterm progress report needs to be sent in between the 3rd and 5th month as of the moment you started your homeschooling, implementing your homeschooling project. If you do your homeschooling project and you say that you're starting, you start homeschooling in July, because many families do a lot of activities over the summer and they want to be able to include those activities in their learning project. I'll get back to you in a second, Kate. Yes, either email or mail will be fine. So, but if you if you say in your project that you're implementing in July, then 3 to 5 months is, you have to count starting the July month. So the status and midterm progress report in the regulation, they're in 2 different sections, but it explicitly says that you can put the 2 of them in the same document. And so that's why we did a document that puts the 2 of them together. We find it simpler for people to communicate that. Of course, if you're not starting homeschooling at the beginning of the year, in September, and you start in the middle of the year, then the timing makes it that you probably need to separate those 2 reports out. But for the purposes of this conversation, we're all starting into September 1st. You can combine the status and midterm progress report, and so we've shown you a template in our document with just those 2 combined. The monitoring meeting is obligatory, so you're going to have a meeting no matter if you have problems or not. And that monitoring meeting, the minister's office has told us that they believe the vast majority of the meetings will be done virtually. So we've learned that they are going to be opening offices in Montreal, Quebec, and they'll have a few people in Trois-Rivières, and those people will be working centrally, and they'll be contacting families virtually, so either by phone or FaceTime, Zoom, Skype, etc. They will be able to have meetings that way. There may be a few people in some regional offices. They would not be with the school boards. They would be in regional government offices. So now these are bureaucrats that will be following us. They're not going to be people in the school boards, and those people, we're assuming they may want to come and see physically a family if a child has a specific problem, or if they're struggling a lot with filling out the paperwork. But they've told us that they're planning on having the vast majority of their meetings done virtually. And this is not like in the past where we had a meeting at the end of the year to evaluate the child. This is not the purpose of that meeting. The meeting was in the law, it is in the regulation, it is in the section on implementation of the learning plan. So our our understanding by the context, it's not 100% clear, but because it says in the regulation that it could be any time during the school year, we suspect it'll be more of a meeting around like, how's it going? You know, are you able to do all the activities you wanted to do? More around like, are you doing stuff? Then how is your child doing? It is clearly not a progress. Let me sit down and evaluate the child, which is why your child does not have to go to these meetings. The regular monitoring meeting does not need to have your child at it, because it isn't a meeting to evaluate the child's progress. It is a meeting to discuss how your learning project is being implemented and whether it's working. Whether, I'm assuming it's a moment where you could talk about resources that you need. If you're having trouble getting a resource from a school board, then that would be, you know, an opportunity to kind of get that government person to be a person who would advocate for you. All right. During the year, at some point in the year, you need to get your child evaluated. Now, I've had a lot of questions. People, you know, still confuse the evaluation with what was happening with the school boards in the past. And that, my sense is, that is not the same purpose as what it was in the past. The evaluation, it doesn't say in the documents that you have to give an evaluation report to the government. The evaluation, your only duty is to get an evaluation of your child done sometime in the year. That evaluation can be done with ministry exams. It can be done with a school board evaluation. It can be done by a private school. It can be done by a holder of a teaching license, or it can be done by the minister's office when you send in a portfolio. So those are 5 methods. You have to choose at least one of those methods and have your child evaluated during the year, at any time during the year, with one of those 5 methods. And the reason why I do not think that this is not meant to be an evaluation to check whether you're doing good work. It is because it doesn't say explicitly that the person evaluating needs to write a report and that report needs to be sent to the government. All it says is that you need to provide a completion report or a midterm progress report. And so the purpose of the evaluation, my understanding is that it is for you to have objective expert information about your child. And the reason I think this is this is the right interpretation, is I know that there was a researcher at Concordia who had done studies on unschoolers, and one thing that she had said, no, Kate, regarding the monitoring meeting, we don't know when it'll be. We suspect that it'll be throughout the year because, you know, there's probably going to be about 40 people. We're hearing they're going to hire about 40 people to monitor us, and so I doubt they'll be able to do it all at the same time of the year. So I suspect it'll just be throughout the year. They'll probably call you and try to schedule something, and then you work it out with them as to when it would make most sense for you. So to get back to evaluations, so this lady, this research that was done on unschoolers, one of the conclusions that, or one of the insights that she got from this research was that unschoolers, and this is when they were at 10 years old, so it was perfectly expected that unschoolers would not perform well on exams at 10 years old. You know, unschoolers play the long game. But in this case, there were a bunch of 10-year-olds that didn't do well on some exams, and the researcher explained how parents were surprised that their unschooled children hadn't grasped certain notions or didn't know certain things. And I know that was something that impacted people a lot, that the parents didn't know where their kids were, and it was a bit of a shock. And so my feeling is that the government doesn't want parents to be unaware of what level their child is at and how well their children are doing, what their progress is like. So they are forcing us to get our child evaluated, and for us, the parent, to hear that evaluation, so that as someone who is an expert in education, so a teacher, a school board, the minister, the exams, will give you feedback on where your child is at that moment. which is why if you already are a holder of a teacher's license, if you have a parent, if you have a parent that does, or a friend who has a teacher's license, if you have a real great relationship with the school board, or whichever way you get evaluated, the government has not put in the regulations that it can't be a parent, it can't be a friend, there can't be a conflict of interest. There's none of that, any of that kind of notion. And that's why I don't think that they want us to use this as a means of control and checking on us. I think it's more of they want to make sure that we've had during our year a reality check to know where our children are, and that we have someone who is trained, and the government has given these people a teacher's license. So if they've given you a teacher's license, it's because they trust you to teach to 30 kids in a room. Then they're also trusting a person who has that license to be able to have a lucid, unbiased view of a child's progress. And so I want to, a lot of people said, well, how do they want the child to be evaluated? What kind of report do we have to give? Like, can I do it? Can my friend do it? Can someone else do it? And my answer to that is, I don't think the minister is ever going to tell us what it needs to be. And nor should we worry about what the minister thinks it should be. Because if all the minister wants is us to have a reality check, it's up to us to negotiate with the evaluator what that reality check will look like. So we will talk to our evaluator and say, I'd like it to be based on interview. I'd like it to be based on a portfolio I'm going to show you. I'd like to bring my kid, and I'd like you to talk to my kid and then give me an appreciation. And if that evaluator is comfortable with whatever you're proposing, then that should be fine. There's nothing in the regulation that says anything about what this evaluation needs to look like. So, and I'll remind you, even if the minister gives us guidelines about what the evaluation should look like, the minister no longer has a better right to interpret the law. The law will be interpreted by a judge if ever there's a conflict on the interpretation. And the judge will see a piece of paper that says, on the regulation, there needs to be someone with a teacher's license that evaluates, and there's no qualifier, there's no detail. That judge is going to say, well, hello, mother or sister or whoever, do you have a teacher's license? Yes. Well, the words on the page, that's what it says. I'm not a lawyer, this is my interpretation, but I've been told by lawyers that that's how, like, the judge is the one that interprets. The minister can't interpret anymore. He had the privilege of writing. Now it's the judge that interprets. But for the rest, it's my interpretation. But because there's no qualifier, there's no detail. To me, that just means we trust people that we've given the license to teach to be able to evaluate a child. Now, once you as a parent get that evaluation, it might be a verbal evaluation, it might be a written evaluation, whatever that format is. You as a parent are charged with taking that information and using that information plus other information that you have to provide a completion report that tells the government what the progress of your child has been. So so if a teacher tells me, your child has improved in this, or your child is at this level for this, and that your child wasn't able to do that in the past, because last year they weren't able to write a full sentence, and then the teacher says, yeah, your child can write a full sentence this year. Well, you as a parent will listen to that piece of information, you'll compare it to the information that you have from whatever experiences you had last year, and you can write in your completion report, yes, my child is progressing. I had him evaluated by a teacher, and he's progressing in math, and he's progressing in French. But in English, he's progressing, but with, needs help. So the evaluation and all of the experiences that you have with your child, whether you give your child quizzes, whether you get feedback from a football coach or from a music teacher, or, all of these facts, you use them to be able to justify what you're going to write on that completion report. The evaluation is just one element of that analysis process that the parent has to do and communicate. Now, the minister at any time can ask you for more information. So it's important that if you do get a written report from the evaluator, that you keep it. And it's important that you are able to justify. You can't just like decide, oh yeah, okay, my kid progresses and everything. You have to have some basis to be able to write it. So you need to be able to explain to the minister why you think your child is progressing in this or that. But it can be anecdotal information. I mean, we can try it, right? You can say, you know, well, like I said, last year my child at the depanneur at the corner, again, the convenience store, wasn't able to, you know, calculate the change. And now this year we, you know, 3 times in a row we went and he was able to calculate the change. So I'm seeing progress. So that's those are the things that you have to do as a parent in order to be legally okay. Now the school board is according to the regulation is required to provide you services if you request them. They cannot impose services on you. And I have to stress this. Their school boards, I'm not sure at what point they will be trained on this new law. If a school board calls you after you've sent in your notice and you don't want to talk to them, you can tell them, listen, I appreciate your call, but according to the law, I don't have to have a conversation with you right now. I do not want any services from you. If you have questions about the law, please call AQED or the minister. And leave it at that. We'll be happy to talk to any school board who has any questions about the law. You as an individual parent are not responsible for educating the school board. If you do want services, though, from the school board, you can contact them. We have in our guide a list of the services. Some of the all of the services are free. Some of the services are they'll need you have to provide the education plan if you want to have the services. Many of the services are based on availability, but you can ask. And what's important is those services that are required for students with special needs, for example, are based on the need. So it says in the law that the school board will provide these services based on need. And so that means that the school board will have to look at the need of the children in the schools and the needs of the children outside, you know, in homeschooling equally. And so, you know, the kids will have to be on the same lists. There is no longer this concept that the school kids get the better service, the first service. Now, we'll have to see how it's implemented, but if we saw a school board that was systematically not providing services to homeschoolers, but providing them to school children, we would have a basis for a complaint, and we could you know, act on that and go talk to the minister. If need be, we could sue that school board. So keep us advised about that. Now, we've been told by the minister and by the school boards that this first year is going to be a year of transition. It's going to be tough. Different people, you know, no one's going to know exactly how things are going. Hi, Tammy. No one's going to know exactly how it's going. Or what we exactly need to do. Everybody's going to do their best. The minister has said we all need to be patient with each other. So the minister has said that he will be patient with parents, and he's hoping that parents will be patient with the minister. And same thing with the school boards. We need to be patient with them. They need to be patient with us. We're going to try to figure it all together. And the school boards have told us that they're really struggling with the services thing. They weren't happy that the services were included and all these services were included, and they're not sure how and how fast they'll be able to provide these services. They've told us to manage your expectations, so I'm giving you that information. I would say, you know, that oh, Tammy, you're welcome. Ask them for the services. But you know, remember that the lady behind the counter at the school board is not responsible for whether you've gotten the services or not, especially this year. So try to stay civil. I'd say be persistent and keep asking, but realize that this year we've explicitly been told that services would be a tough spot for the school boards to provide. They have a lot of they have licenses they need to worry about. They need to worry about a CSSD. They need to worry about teacher unions, and there's a bunch of stuff, and it just made me glad when I heard the list of all the things they need to worry about. It just made me happy that I wasn't working in a school board, so I kind of felt sad for them. That doesn't mean they shouldn't provide services. I'm just saying that realistically, even the best meaning school boards, it might be tough to get services this year. That doesn't mean you shouldn't ask. Just manage your own expectations and have a plan B, because you don't want your child to be suffering too much because the school boards are slower than we would like them to be. Okay, so that is the overview of the steps. Now I want to go over the general remarks and recommendations, and after that I'll open to questions. We'll go through each of the appendices, and I'll just allow you to ask any questions that you have, and I'll tell you if I have any insights, but feel free to sign off at any time. Not yesterday, 2 days ago when I did this in French, it lasted 2.5 hours. You don't have to stay for 2.5 hours. Once you've gotten your fill, go. You don't have to worry. Everything's in the guide. So if you follow the guide, you've kind of gotten all the insights we have to give. In terms of general remarks and recommendations, write for the documents that you provide. I've spoken about this before. Write short documents. Use simple language. Even if you have a teaching background, even if you know all of the pedagogical language, try to keep your language human. We don't want to train the people in the minister's office to expect people who have teacher training to write all of the documents. We don't want parents to feel like they have to pay someone. We don't want parents to feel like they have to be part of AQED in order to fill out the documents. We want the person who doesn't have the money to be part of an association and who doesn't have the teacher education background to be able to fill out the documents in one 1 hour and not have to stress about not using the right language or about being reprimanded by the minister because they didn't use the language that they use in school. We'd like to ask you if you would like to share CC your documents when you send stuff to the minister, to CC AQED. We're going to try to keep track. We're going to keep your information confidential. We're not planning on sharing any one document. We will, if ever we do want to share a document because we absolutely love what you did, we will ask you and make absolutely sure that we have a release from you before we do anything. But the idea is we just want to have a general idea of what people are sending in, and we want to have a general idea of what the government is responding. We want to be able to know when people tested stuff whether it worked or not, because if you try, for example, to do a portfolio for your whole family instead of one per child, and if it passes, the government says, hey, your portfolio is great, then I want everybody to know. And I want everybody, in the following weeks to send in learning projects that are easier and that are family oriented. So if the more you provide, we don't know what will be valuable to know until we see it. The more we're able to know what the average is, what the usual is, because we want to know when it's going well, not just when it's going badly. And that in the past, people would call us when there was a problem, but they'd never tell us when things were going well. So if you CC us, then we'll know that it's going well. You don't have to call us and say, oh, it went fine. Because if things go badly in one area and we start getting a lot of complaints, we need to know whether this complaint, we're just getting a lot of complaints because people in that area have decided they're going to do something about this, but really it's the same everywhere, or whether it's one office or one government person who's more zealous than the others, and then we need to solve that. But we don't know if we don't have the context of how it works throughout the province. So the more you share with us, the more information we have, the better we can advocate for you, the better we can protect you. And this is regardless of whether you're a member or not. If we have 2 members that have a problem with a person at the minister's office, and then we see that 10 other non-members have a problem, then we'll go to defend our 2 members, but it'll help the 10 other people as well, right? So the more input that we have, the better we can advocate for all of you. To do the analysis of this, we have a volunteer and her husband who are sociologists, so they're used to doing research and tracking confidentiality and being careful about stuff. So we have protocols in place for that. Um, for any document that you send in to the government can ask you for more information, and you have to provide it if the government asks you for more information, if you have it, right? Um, uh, any request for more information will be provided in writing, and it will contain recommendations. So if you do a learning project and the government doesn't like something that you put in, they have to send you a letter in writing saying that there's a problem with your learning project, and then explaining and giving you recommendations so that you can fix your learning project. And in every case, you have 30 days to send a new document. And this is important because remember what I was saying, like we're going to be testing stuff. We're going to be trying stuff, and we're encouraging people to test stuff this year because the government said that they needed to be patient with us, and the guide hasn't come out yet. So they haven't told us what they want. So anything that we do that respects the regulation is fair game. The worst that can happen is the government will send us a letter and tell us what it is we need to fix. And this is why I'm telling you, test, try things. I have people who've asked me, can I do a learning project over several years? Why not? Try it. Can I put many children in the same notice or many children in the same learning project and have one learning project for the family? You know what? The regulation doesn't explicitly forbid it, so why don't you try it? If it passes, then you will have taught the whole community and yourself that there's a simpler way to do a learning project, and it will benefit us for decades to come. If you assume that you are not allowed because it doesn't explicitly say that you can, and you would think that maybe the representative needs to have a separate one for each child, then if it passes, we learn nothing. We don't know. So I would encourage you to try things that you think will make your life easier. Because the worst thing that will happen is if you make a learning project for all of your children and it doesn't pass, well, all you have to do is copy and paste the same learning project 5 times, change the name on it, and then send it in. So it's not like it's a huge amount of trouble to redo it. The worst that can happen, according to this regulation, is that you'll get a letter from the minister saying, whoops, try again. So I encourage you to try stuff. I've even told people try to put minimal stuff until to the point that you're uncomfortable with the little amount of information you're providing. Because if you're comfortable with it, then you'll never know if you could do it even simpler. Okay. The meetings with the minister's representative, I've told you that they expect it to mostly be phone, by Skype, FaceTime, etc. We've asked about chat, and they're actually looking if they would accept chats. We explicitly worked hard to have the right to bring someone in the room with you or on the phone call with you. You're allowed to bring someone to support you, to help you. And we highly recommend that during your meetings, especially this first year, that you bring someone with you, that you schedule the phone call or the FaceTime or whatever for a time where you will have someone with you to support you or someone on the line to support you. Try to get someone who's level-headed, who understands the regulations. Make sure you talk to that person in advance and tell them what your expectations are. When you get into the meeting, make sure you tell the government representative what your expectations of the meeting are. So if you want to follow the program really closely, and you want to get a ton of feedback, and you want to get support, and you want to get ideas about how you can better homeschool, then tell that person and tell them that you are welcome all of their feedback and constructive criticism. If the reason you are going to that room is that you're legally, or that you're going to take that phone call, is that you are legally required to do so, and you have no interest in hearing the feedback, and you have no interest in getting support from that person, say it politely, tell them, I've been homeschooling for X number of years, I have a support group, I've already homeschooled 2 other children, whatever. I'm here because I need to address my legal obligation, but I don't really want any recommendations from you, and I just want you to tell me that what I'm doing is not negligence, and that's it. I don't need you to help me improve my homeschooling. And if you do that, and then the minister's representative tries to pass constructive criticism, then you or your support person can interject and say, you know what, thank you, but this is not the purpose of the meeting. So you know, I appreciate that you want to help me, but I really don't need this. And you know, for the interest of time and to allow other people to have more time with you, can we, you know, move this along. We encourage you to stay, to not only be civil, but arrive with a smile and try to build a constructive relationship with that person. We expect that over time, you know, if you've had 5 years of meetings and your children are progressing well, and there's no reason for the minister's office to doubt that anything you're doing, we expect that, you know, it's human nature. If that person has 20 calls to do in a day and they have 3 problem calls in a day, well, the 17 other calls are going to be pretty short. So you want to make it, you don't want to have that person single you out as a troublemaker that needs to be, you know, checked, or you know, needs to be shown who's the boss. You don't want to get that, you know, that kind of tension. You want them to think, okay, she, you know, she does what she has to do, and her kids, don't worry about them. So when, you know, our annual meeting will be a 5-minute call where I'll ask you, you know, how's it going? Oh, it's going fine. You know, are you still doing what you planned on doing? Yeah, I'm still doing it. Same thing as last year. Okay, good. Well, call you next year. That's what we want to get to. We want them to feel comfortable enough with us that they'll follow the law, you know, but not any more than that. So, you know, bring a cup of coffee, or, you know, a new colleague that you have to work with. They're not the one who wrote the law. They're not the one who wrote the regulation. They just work there. So try to get them on your side. Anytime you have a meeting with the government, we suggest that you note the main conclusions in an email and you send it to them. Please CC us so that we understand the nature of the conversations. It will help us understand what's happening more. But send it to the representatives so that they can confirm that that was their understanding as well. This will allow you to this will allow you to have a written record of what happened and what you understood. And if the representatives does not correct you in what you understood, then that is what you are held to. And it's always helpful if you write it before they do, because if you write it, then you can put the spin that you want on it, and then they need to decide whether it's worthwhile to correct you if it's not quite the spin, or if they just let it go. So again, note back to human nature. If you're not much of trouble and you kind of put a spin that you like better on the conclusions of the conversation, they might just let it go. Use it. If you have trouble getting someone to you know, be with you in a meeting, you can ask AQED. We do not guarantee, and we if you're a member, okay, we'll see if we can find someone to accompany you if you're a member. Really, it would be better if you found someone on your own, because I don't want to raise expectations, but I do know that we have many volunteers and I'd like them to get experience accompanying and hearing what's happening so that we can better answer people's questions. So so if you're desperate and you need someone and you don't have anybody, you know, you can always, and you're a member of AQED, you can always call us and we will try to see if we can get someone in your region, maybe another member, or if we have a volunteer in your region who is able to or who's available virtually. We'll try to see if we can scrounge someone up for you. The language of communication with the minister's representatives. You are allowed to speak whatever language you want to the minister, as long as they have someone who is available and who is trained to be able to address you in that language. The minister always has francophones and anglophones, but legally they're only obligated to have French services, but in reality in Quebec, all of the ministries have anglophones and they regularly deal with people in English, and that has nothing to do with your eligibility. You can talk about a child that doesn't have eligibility in English with the minister, no problem. You can send your documentation to the minister in English, no problem. And I'm talking more about other languages. If you speak Greek or you prefer Spanish, you can contact the minister's office and ask them if they are able to serve you in Greek or Spanish or whatever language, and if they have someone and they can, they will. The language of instruction does not have anything to do with eligibility either. The minister has said it many times. He cannot regiment the language that people speak in their homes. You can teach in whatever language you want. Your children can progress in literacy in Greek. They can progress in writing in Spanish. They can do math in English. The only thing is you also have to teach French. Now, you do not have to teach French as a first language, even if you don't have eligibility. You just have to teach them French. If you do teach your child in another language than in English and French, you are still allowed to use the portfolio option as an evaluation. You will send it to the minister's office, and it'll be up to the minister to find someone who can translate the portfolio if you want the minister's office to evaluate the child's portfolio. So the only thing about Bill 101 is if you want services from the school board, you will have to deal with the school board that you have eligibility for. So to be able to get services from the Anglophone school board, you have to have English school eligibility, or your child has to have it. The child for whom you're getting the services has to have English school eligibility. The other thing is, even if you teach in English, in Greek, or in Spanish at home, it does not change eligibility if you go back to school, if your child goes back to school. Even if you homeschool in English all their lives, if they go back to school, they will have to go back to French school if they don't have the English eligibility. The child's progress. When we're talking about the child's progress throughout the law and the regulation, there's this notion of what's important is the child's progress. And this is important. It is progress according to the child, not according to a independent standard. The child does not have to be at the same level as children of the same age in the same in the system. The child, in your documentation, in your progress reports, you will need to show, or you need to explain that the child has progressed according to where they were the year before. And we encourage people to talk about global progress. At school, children are more advanced in certain subjects and struggle in other subjects. We should not be flipping out because a child has trouble with French or with math or with English. We expect that even if the child has a problem with one subject, that should not be considered a progress problem in the global idea of the law. We are hoping the standard will be, if the child has problems with one subject or two, that does not trigger an extra meeting. We'll see, but that's the way we want to position it with people. So this is the overview of what you need to do. I am going to briefly explain AQED strategy according to all this. So we've talked already about doing simple documents in simple language. We're encouraging everybody to provide the minimal information and to test and to try things. Try what you want what the law to be, because this year all that happens is you get a letter. And frankly, I think it's going to be the same every other year. If you make a mistake, or you didn't interpret things correctly, they'll send you a letter. The difference is this year they have not published a guide they haven't told us. So you won't even look like you're in bad faith, because if they didn't tell us what we could or couldn't do or what they expected us to do, then they can't complain when we don't do what they want. So take this year as an experimental year. Try to the level that you're willing to risk it, you know, and that you're comfortable doing. And make sure you report back and let us know what works and what doesn't work, and CC us if you like, so we can see it for ourselves. And this way we'll work together to create a program or a system that works for us. So that's it for the overview. At this point, I'm going to go through each of the appendices that talks about each of the different items that we have to do, but I'm just going to basically open it up for questions. So before we start on the appendices, are there any general questions? There's a bit of a lag, so I'm going to start with the notice, and if you have questions, just pop them up, and I'll answer them as we go on. So for the notice of homeschooling, it's important to know that a notice is not asking permission. You're telling the minister that you are choosing to homeschool. You don't have to wait for an answer. You don't have to wait for permission. Homeschooling is a right, and you can just tell the minister that you will be homeschooling. People have asked me, can we send a notice with many children on it? I really don't see why not. I don't see why the government would want to manage more paper. I would send it, I would put all my kids on the same sheet. But yeah, we don't know. So try it and see if they send you a letter saying there's a problem. The example that we put in the guide gives the minister's address, because when we printed the guide, we didn't have the address. The address has been published. I'm not sure if it's up on our website yet. If Beatrice, are you on? Anyways, if you're on, check. Otherwise, I will ask Beatrice after this whether the website has been updated. Okay, you can decide to homeschool at any time. Like I said, the only difference is all of the dates will change based on when you start to homeschool, and some of the reports you don't have to do if you start homeschooling later versus earlier. So Don asks, I noticed they mentioned being able to make use of school labs and libraries. How do you think this would work for the labs? Would we have to hire someone to supervise? It's up to the school boards to make the rules. So it says in the regulations that they have to provide one school lab in the school board, but the use is based on their modalities. So you would have to write to your school board and ask them what their modalities are. There's 72 school boards. We've talked to the school boards and told them it would be nice if you aligned your way of working so that we could have one guide that would tell all parents, here's how you should go about asking for services. The Federation of School Boards has said that would be a good idea, but I suspect before we wrangle 72 school boards to agree on one process, it'll take a while. So your best bet is to write to your school board and ask them. I am pretty certain that if you write them now, they'll have no clue. But write them down now so that your request is in someone's filings, and then try again 3 months or 6 months from now. You can start getting impatient maybe in the spring, being realistic. So sorry I couldn't answer it better than that, but it's based on the school board. So I've already talked about the difference between a learning project and a learning plan. We've spoken to the minister several times about the fact that the learning plan would be 2 pages. They have not blinked an eye. So we're good with that. You're welcome, Don. So if you have a child with special needs, so one thing I wanted to say is, with everything that we said, like the minimalist project, learning projects, the minimalist progress reports, all of that goes out the window if you have a special needs child and you need services. If you have a special needs child and you need services, do whatever it is you need to do to get the services you need. I want us to stick together as a team, but I do not want to do it at the expense of services that special needs children critically need. However, if they ask you for information that you do not feel is relevant in order to assess If they take advantage of the fact that you have a special needs child to ask you for 150 things and you start thinking they're exaggerating, then come and reach out to us and we will intervene. But if you feel that the information they're asking of you, like a more detailed learning project so that they understand what your learning goals are, so that the resource teacher can help your child work on those learning goals, well, don't worry about the fact that we're saying that you need to do 2 pages. If you need to do 10 pages so that you communicate correctly with the person that's going to be helping your child, do so, and don't worry about not sticking together. Like, you need to kind of, you need to save your family and your kids and do what you need to do there. So if in the learning project, if your child has special needs, you should mention it, and you should mention if there are things that are required in the regulations that you do not feel your child will be able to do. I have some families who've told me, my kid has special needs, and I'm lucky if they learn French and math. There is no way, or I'm lucky if they'll learn English and math. There is no way I can teach them a second language realistically. Like, I need to concentrate on the real basics. Explain that. Explain that your child is struggling heavily with English and and numeracy, and that you need to concentrate on that, and that you are asking for an exception according to Clause 8. And Clause 8 is the exception that says if your child has special needs, you can ask for exemptions on these regulations in this law. It doesn't mention anything about proof. So start by explaining, if ever the school board started asking for proof that your child has special needs, then you can start demanding for school board services to be able to evaluate your child to have the proof, which is why I suspect the government didn't ask for any proof, because they know that it takes years before the kids get services. So explain the situation. Maybe they'll ask for a meeting so that the person from the government can kind of smell check your excuse that you need services, but don't hesitate just because you don't have a formal diagnostic. If you feel that there's a problem, and if you've asked for an evaluation from the school board and they've put you on a waiting list, well, explain that to the minister in your learning project and explain why you're not going to be covering these other things, and then they can take it from there and tell you whether what the next steps are, and if they accept the fact that you're not going to cover these other things, or if they want a diagnostic or something, in which case you will ask them to diagnose your child. They'll tell you they can't, and so you'll say, well, okay, I'll do the learning project the way you want it in 2 years when you give me the diagnostic. So that's kind of what we're trying to get at. So I think that was it for the learning project. Oh yes, so the learning project talks about an approximate plan of time to be allocated to learning activities. It's very tempting to put the number of hours that you're going to spend per week or per day if you're someone who does a specific number of hours. We're asking people to think more broadly about education. Even the people who do 2 or 4 hours of formal homeschooling every day know that their children don't stop learning once the school board books get closed. And that is the view we want the government to understand. We want the government to understand that it is not when we're sitting at the table learning from a book. That is not the only time that learning happens. And so asking for approximate time for learning activities is not something that we think is realistic, because it just doesn't happen that way. Learning does not happen like that when we homeschool. And so we are encouraging people to put something general, like we'll be working on math, French, and English every day, or several times a week, or we will be working on all of these skills on a continuous basis throughout the year, something like that, or from June to from September to June. Being very general, because we're hoping that the regulation over time will shift to really grasp the fact that when our kids are in, with support groups, with activities they're learning, when they're on the street and asking us about street names they're learning, and when we go to the convenience store they're learning, and when they're in front of the school board books they're learning, but you can't split up time like that. Okay. So the organizations that will contribute to your child's learning, if you keep your learning projects simple and you only focus on providing one element per obligatory element, or per obligatory learning area, then it becomes really easy to pick the elements that are easy to document. So even if my child goes to a soccer club every week, you could just say that your child is, plays soccer on a weekly basis. And if your child sometimes is playing soccer in the street, in the back street, and sometimes in the organization, well, you could just say, my child plays soccer every week, and then you don't have to put the organization, because the organization is not necessary to the learning project, because your child is also doing soccer in the street, in the back street. If your child practices piano at home every day, but also goes to a music institute, well, you can say my child practices piano on a daily basis, and you don't have to put the organization, because even if you didn't send your child to that organization, they would still be doing the minimal required to address the music, domain learning area. And so that's why we show a project, a learning project that was very general, that talks a lot about day-to-day stuff, so that we do not have to document organizations. The organization, in any case, the minister is looking for organizations. What about cooperatives, Tammy? Again, if your activities that you are doing are not at the cooperative, are not required to meet the minimum of the law, you can decide that those are not part of the learning activities, and just focus on the learning activities that you do at home that correspond to the minimum of the law. So it's up to you. If you feel that the cooperative is just an easy way to be able to check off, oh, I did this, and that, then you can put it, but you'll have to put the coordinates. But if you just want to say, well, we do reading every day at home, we do math, every time we go to the convenience store, and we play, math games, and we open a notebook once in a while and do a page of math, or whatever it is. Even if they do a math club at the cooperative, if the activities you do at home are sufficient to work on progression in math, then the cooperative is just extra. You can say, well, that's not a learning activity, it's a math club, and they have fun there. For me, it's a socialization, or something like that. So you only have to pick and choose the elements that you know you will do. Because if you put stuff that you're not sure of, and then it doesn't happen, then you have to send in, in your report, you have to say you didn't do it, or if you change something drastic, if you make a learning project that's so specific that any change makes it look like a drastic change, then you're going to have to continuously send change notices to the minister. But if you put something that's very general that you're going to do every day, like, my kid does tons of science stuff, but I didn't know what science thing to put, because I don't know what science thing he's going to do in the next year. Well, I know he's on the computer every day, so in his learning project, I would put that he's going to be learning computers, because there's no brainer. I'm not going to have any problem justifying that. Okay. Again, even for school books, if you're going to put a school book, if you're going to use school books in your learning project, I would recommend don't put the titles. Just say we're going to be using manuals and notebooks to work on our math, or to work on our French, or work on our English. And then if the school board ends up not being a great one, and you decide to, your kid doesn't really click with it, and you decide to change it in the middle of the year, well, then you're still respecting your learning project, and you don't have to identify any change, because you didn't say which school board year we're going to use. So for a change to a learning project, we really think about something big. Like if you go from formal schooling to unschooling, or vice versa, that to us is a big change. But look at your learning project. If you do your learning project high level enough, you could go from formal schooling to unschooling and not have a problem. But if, for example, you sent your child, like the example we have in our guide, suddenly you signed up your child to an online high school in the US, whereas before you were teaching your child out of all these informal stuff, or you were unschooling. Well, that's a major change. That would be something that you want to communicate. And it brings me back to the organizations. I think the minister is more concerned about people who send their children to an organization every day of the week, 5 days a week, and that the parent is not necessarily expecting to do a lot of math, a lot of the learning project, him or herself. If the parent is not doing a sufficient amount of activities to respect the minimum of the law and is sending their child to another organization to do the minimum required by the law, the minister wants to know what that organization is. I believe that that's the spirit of this regulation. And so keeping that in mind, just make sure that you as a parent, if you don't want to have to name the organizations, just make sure that you as a parent are doing one item in each of the learning areas required, and then you don't have to name the other organizations because they're not required for the minimum required by the law. I said required a lot in that sentence. Okay, anyways. Okay, so if there's problems, usually with a document, you've got 30 days to send it back. Any questions about the notice or the learning project? All right, the status and midterm reports. As I said before, these are actually two reports that are combined in one here because you're allowed to combine it. In some cases, you might want to keep it separate. So we have stated in the explanations what has to be put in the status report, what has to be in the midterm report. The status, can you do formal schooling for core subjects and specify that you're choosing unschooling for other subjects? I don't like, in this process, I don't like I don't like tags. I don't like labels. That's the word I was looking for, because I think different people have different perspectives on what unschooling is, and I'm afraid that everybody who writes unschooling on their paper will be judged one way or the other. Same thing with formal schooling. Like I'm really afraid of miscommunication. So I would highly recommend that people write a description. So instead you can say, like, I will use notebooks for math, for core subjects, and use activities and outings and stuff for the other subjects. That to me is more is a better explanation than what does unschooling mean. I have a clear idea in my mind, but I know that not everybody shares that idea. I also don't want the minister to make statistics based on labels. I don't want them to say, well, everybody who has unschooling, is bad or good at this or that, and then everybody who does formal schooling is like this or that. If we write descriptions, it's a lot harder for them to be able to label us and to categorize us. And I think we want to be looked at as individuals with individual projects and not kind of put in boxes. But I guess you could write it. So it's not wrong. I just would prefer people be more nuanced in how they write things. God, labels are bad. Except maybe if you have a special needs kid and you need services, then you can shortcut to get the minister to give you services. So labels can be good if you're asking for something. But if you don't want anything, don't put labels. All right, so if you put a general learning project and it's high level, and if you do a good learning project that is a good predictor of the things that your family does anyways, and it's going to happen, then when you send in your status report, you should have nothing to say, because you should be able to say the project has been implemented and all of the activities I said I would do, we are doing well, or we are doing with no, like, there's no roadblocks in any of the activities that we are doing. So that, like, those two sentences will be your status report if you do a learning project that is accepted and that is broad and large enough that no matter what you do, it's going to get done. If you do a more specific learning project, or if, I don't know, something happens, like the example that we gave in the guide was this kid got really sick. And so, she used to play always in the park or do sports, and the parent put that in the learning project, but the child got sick and now they can't do sports anymore. Well, you can indicate changes in your learning project. So if there's a significant change, like I said, if you switch if suddenly you send your child to an online school, or something major changes, then that you would communicate within 15 days of the change happening. But if it's a minor change, like, oh, now they won't be doing sports anymore, we don't think that that's something that's significant that we would need to tell right away. That if that happens, then you would write it in your progress report, in your status report, sorry, which is combined with your progress report here. So you would say, yes, we did this activity. No, we didn't do this activity, and here's why. You can change your plan, your project, your learning project at any time. So your progress report would be a good moment to also say, well, you know what? Lily was sick and she's going to be sick for months still. The doctors told us we have to take it easy. So we've decided to change our project, and she will not be doing any sports, and we're not going to be doing any outings this year. So we've removed that from our project. When you get to your final completion report, you don't have to refer to sports and outings anymore, because you removed it from the project that you had. Otherwise, what you can do is you can leave it in your project, and you can say, well, we didn't do it, so as status report, our project still includes doing these outings, but we did not do this activity. We plan on doing it in the spring, and it'll be done by our completion report. So there's two places you can kind of set a change. You can set a change in expectations and say, finally, we said we were going to do this, but now we're not going to do it anymore, so don't stop looking for it. Or we said we were going to do this, but we haven't done it yet, but we'll get to it. You can tackle it one way or the other. The progress, we recommend staying very high level. So we've put a scale of, a label of yes, yes with assistance, yes with difficulty, or no. This is not revolutionary. Schools do it. We've seen, I never know how to say des écoles alternatives. It's like charter schools, but they're public charter schools. In French, it doesn't exist in the English system in Quebec, but in the French system, there are the equivalent of public charter schools that do very informal learning, and they use these kind of report cards, this kind of grid as a report card. We've also seen some school boards use this kind of grid as a progress report for kids who are homeschooling. So this is not something that's going to be a stretch for the minister to accept. We think that there will not be any problem, and so you don't have to be detailed about your issues with the progress. You can just say, yeah, my child's progressing. Yep. I would say think about it. If you're going to put something like progresses with difficulty, it may become a red flag for them to want to find out more. If you have a child with special needs, feel free, and you want services and you want the government to intervene and to know about it and to help, then paper your progress report with the fact that your child is not progressing or is having great difficulty, and lay it on heavy, and it'll be a huge warning flag, and you'll get a meeting with the minister's representative, and then you can explain to them why your child needs all these services and ask them how they can help you, and to provide you with recommendations. But if you're comfortable with the way your child is progressing, and you've had your child evaluated by someone who doesn't raise any huge flags, then it's probably wiser to stick more to the yes progresses, or yes progresses with assistance, because on a scale of 1 to 4, if you're in the top 2, probably it won't raise a flag, and if you're in the bottom 2, it probably will. So you have to be truthful. You have to be able to back up what you say, but some of this stuff is relative. So if you're on the fence, choose what side of the fence you go on into based on the results you want out of it. There's something else I wanted to say about that. I don't remember. The learning project is the item that we are the least sure about. Like, there's so much information that I want in it. You may get a letter saying that it is not right. This is one of the ones I'm telling you, make it so minimal you're uncomfortable with the lack of information you're providing. And then if they send you a letter contact AQED. If everybody gets a letter after doing something minimal, we'll look at what it is that people are getting, and we will provide you with recommendations as to what to add. What we want them to have to work for the extra information. If it's not explicit in the regulations that it has to be there and they start asking for it, well, we're going to give it, one drop at a time. So, if they say, well, arts, you need to tell us what kind of arts they're going to do, because you're supposed to give us what the subjects and disciplines that they'll be doing. Well, so tell us more about the arts. Well, you can write a one-sentence letter saying, for arts, we will be doing dance. And that is answering their request. You don't need to put a half page, and we don't want them to be requesting a half page. So let's give them a little bit at a time and have them work for the extra information, so that at some point they give up and we can keep keeping it simple. Which is why I'm saying call AQED. We will advise all the families who get a similar note saying that there's a problem, and we will advise them with what they should respond. And again, if we're all the same, they'll have to send us all a note again if it's not the right thing. It'll be a bit more work this year if you follow this strategy, but it'll save you time over the rest of your children's learning careers, or until, sorry, I should say until they're 16, because their learning careers are gonna last 100 years, right? If you've chosen an evaluation by portfolio, you don't have to send it at this point. You only send it at the end of the year. You only have to do one evaluation throughout the year. So if you do your midterm report and your evaluation hasn't been done yet, your midterm, you have to explain your midterm report on what basis you are evaluating your child's progression. You can write something like, based on day-to-day conversations I've had, or based on the end of chapter tests that I had him do, or based on the feedback that I had from his music teacher and his soccer coach, or a combination of all the above. Here's how I determined the evaluation for this midterm report. If you do it before the midterm report, then you would write that it's based on the evaluation that you had. And then you would, the end of year completion report, you would base it on your observation or your coach or whatever. Okay. I've spoken about the monitoring meeting. I don't think I had anything else to say about that. So any questions about the status and midterm reports or the monitoring meeting? Okay, the evaluation, AQED is looking at seeing if we can hire or create a recommended list of people that you can reach out to get your child evaluated. We're going to try to see if we can get volume pricing, and maybe negotiate if there's 50 families that would like to have an evaluator who is trained by AQED and to be able to assess the minimum required to respect the law. We're going to look into that. We're going to see what we can do, or we might just create lists of evaluators that we've spoken to that we feel are open. We're going to see if there's maybe relationships we can build with like private schools or something else. We're not going to be able to do everything the first year, but these are things that we've been talking about and we want to see. One of the important things I wanted to say about the portfolio, about the evaluation, is the portfolio is the only option that is directly evaluated by the minister. And I know the minister expects the majority of families to choose the portfolio evaluation. And families that are comfortable with that can do it, and that's not a problem. But you just need to realize that the other evaluation methods, the parent sees the evaluation, sees the report, and the parent is the person writing the progress report. And then the parent sends the progress report, and all the minister sees is the progress report. And then the minister can decide whether they want to ask us to send the backup and the actual evaluation to back up the progress report. But the portfolio, the minister sees directly what the child is, and it's the minister interpreting the progress. So you don't have that buffer of having the parent between the evaluation and what the government sees. So for someone who's kind of nervous about their child's performance, like there's some children that don't perform well under pressure. They don't perform well with a new person. You know, they may not document you. They might not do much documentation, and so you might not be able to make a portfolio that you feel provides enough information, or you might not like making a portfolio. Well, you may need to have more than one evaluation before you actually get a truthful evaluation of what where your child is at. We've also seen people be evaluated by the school boards by people who were biased against certain learning methods. And so we've seen some evaluations that really weren't reflective of where the child was. So as with any professional, like a doctor or a psychologist, if you don't like that person and you're not liking the recommendations or the results of what they're saying, you can get a second and you can get a third opinion. And this is the same case. You don't have to tell the minister that you went to see 3 people before you got a report that you felt really reflected your child's abilities. So that's an opportunity. Whereas with the minister, I mean, they evaluate the portfolio. I'm not sure you can send in a second one, or, you know, I don't know what happens if they feel there's a lack of progress based on the portfolio that they see. You need to talk to the person who's doing the evaluation and make sure that they have the right background. You need to negotiate with them to decide what the evaluation that you want, you know, what it'll be. Kate says there will be no cost with the minister portfolio method, correct? Yeah, no cost with the minister portfolio method, which is also a big factor. And I can completely understand people wanting to send their portfolio in. And I don't expect there to be systematic problems. But especially this year, I feel I'm not sure how comfortable I would be being the guinea pig and sending the portfolio first. But that, you know, it's up to every family, and like I said, I don't expect there to be problems. So you should feel comfortable sending the portfolio as well. All right. So in the guide, we have suggestions for what to ask for an evaluation when you're determining who can be evaluating you. So at the end, there's the completion report. The completion report is basically like the status and midterm report, except that you're removing anything that talks about the activities that you did. At the end of the year, they don't seem to care what you did or what you didn't do. They care about the results. So they will ask about, you know, what was the progress for the different learning areas that you had, and you can fill out a grid like this. Don says, if we have our portfolio reviewed by a third-party certified teacher, do we still have to send a copy to the minister? No. It's up to you to negotiate your evaluation method with the third-party certified teacher. So if the certified teacher accepts to evaluate your child based on a portfolio, then that is considered that evaluation. You have respected what the law says. I'm not a lawyer, but that is an interpretation that that makes the most sense, and if for sure, I mean, I'm convinced that you don't have to send the portfolio. It says you need to be evaluated by a certified teacher. If you send the certified teacher a portfolio, that evaluation has happened. But sending to the minister is free. Yes. So you still have to make the portfolio. So, you know, with your glue and paste and whatever, or your software, you'll have to pay. But once you've produced it and sent it, if you do it online, then, you know, the minister does not charge for evaluating the portfolio. Again, for the completion reports, for all of these reports, we made grids because it was the most concise way that we could stick it on a page to be able to communicate to you what needed to be put. But feel free to put a free text. I know some people like to just, you know, stream of consciousness, write what, you don't have to be a perfect writer. Just write what your kid did, or, you know, the progress and what the activities, and that will respect the law just as much as these grids will. It'd be great if you could send your stuff on AQED, like if you're going to use AQED templates, leave the logo. For us, it gives us more negotiating power. If the ministers, every second form that they get from a parent has the AQED logo on it, first of all, I think it'll be helpful for parents, because I suspect that parents who have listened to the lives and read the guides and have looked through our website and who've downloaded our forms and filled it out will probably have more of the information that the minister actually wanted, and or you know, they'll feel like you've done your homework a little bit more, and that you've gotten your answers from a good source. So they may end up picking more on people who just stand out, right? Like the person who kind of did it on their own and did their own thing. They might be more curious about it. Whereas if they see the 10th AQED form, they'll be like, okay, people always do the right thing because, you know, they listened to the instructions and it was clear and they just follow the form. Check, 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 check. Yeah, good, stamp. Oh, this person wrote free form, you know, on foolscap. Let me see what they did, because they obviously aren't being, you know, supported by anybody, or, you know, they're not using the support that is provided. So we think it'll be helpful, but, you know, maybe that's just me being, you know, being proud. But it's helpful for a kid. Because in terms of negotiating, like I said, if every second form that they get has an AQED stamp on it, when we will contact them because there's a problem, they will know the reach that we have, and they may want to sit with us more, you know, faster if they know that we have some kind of influence over a broad basin of people. I have to say that the minister has worked very well with us so far. I talked to the right-hand man of the minister on this file on a weekly basis, and I've spoken to him 2 times this week, and he was on vacation. I only found out today that he's been answering my calls and calling me back and you know, checking up on stuff, and I just found out today that he's been on vacation this whole time. So we have a really good working relationship, but you know, the more we show the influence we have, the more we'll be listened to, as we have been so far. So the school board services, we don't know anything more than what's written on the paper, on the guide. We'll have to find out, you'll need to try, and we'll have to find out what school boards are doing in general, but it'll probably be very variable from one school board to the other. We don't know anything about getting the DES. We've clearly asked many times, and we've told them that this is something that they can give our community that will make people want to sign up. And so I think they understand the urgency. We'll see as soon as we know, we'll let you know. Any questions so far on the school board services, on the completion report, anything we've said? Okay, I'll keep going. Don't hesitate to interrupt with questions. Problems that may lead to additional meetings. So if in your status report you say, I wasn't able to do any of the activities, then they're going to want to meet you and try to understand what the problem is. Don wants to know, I have many teacher contacts in the Eastern Townships. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much. So, you know, if you want a meeting because you're really struggling with something and you want the advice from the minister, then in the status report, make sure that that's reflected, that you're struggling, and ask for a meeting. But if you don't want a meeting, make sure that if you have issues with the implementation, that you clearly show in your status report that you have an alternate plan well in hand, and you know, share that assurance that your child will be, you know, the activities that your plan B is just as good as your plan A, and I don't think you would necessarily have a meeting in that case. If a progress report is deemed inadequate, so if one of your report does not adequately report on the child's progress, they will send you a written notice and a recommendation to adjust the report. But you can also request that the meeting with the minister's representative. So again, this would be important especially for special needs kids. Like if your child's, if you are not able to report on your child's progress on certain things, same thing with your learning project. If you're not able to fill out the learning project because your child isn't able to do stuff, and you don't know what to do, you are allowed to call the minister and ask them to help you. And if they insist that you write stuff there that your child can't do, well, you say, like, you write it then. You tell me what you think my child can do. And then when your child fails it at the end of, then you can have another meeting with that person saying, that didn't work, so you help me change the project. You can ask the minister to help you if you're struggling with something. It's not necessarily my first advice if you don't want to have a ton of feedback, but if you want to have a ton of support, definitely call the minister, and throughout the law they say they'll give you support and help if you struggle with anything in there. And the third reason you can have a problem that would lead to an additional meeting is if your child's progress has, it doesn't progress, your child doesn't progress enough according to the minister. We're not sure what that means. There's no definition of what progressing enough is. It is clear in the law that the progress is supposed to be according to the child. We're going to need to see how things go to understand whether, what that means and what are the criteria. We don't know them. But one of the things the minister told us is that they kept all of this super vague because we asked them to be flexible. So every time people complain that it's not specific, we don't know, well, they said, look, you asked us to be flexible, to support families, to allow for diversity. If we wrote down all the exceptions that could be, or all the criteria that we're going to use, then we would not have that flexibility. We would not be able to adapt because we would have to follow the law. So the law is very large and broad, and the regulation as well, so that we can have a bigger sandbox to work with you. So be careful, because I've heard a lot of people complain that things aren't specific and aren't clear and we don't know what we need to do, because if we keep complaining about that, then they are going to put more details in the regulations, and then we're going to be stuck with the details whether we like it or not. So we much prefer having a broad thing and ourselves defining what that means. So we'll together work on what are the details that need to be in these things and try to push towards the interpretations that we like, instead of asking the minister to be more clear, and they could be more clear in a direction that we don't like at all. So that's it. We have frequently asked questions in the guide. What else can you do to support our work to support homeschoolers? Talk to your family, talk to your friends, talk to your colleagues about homeschooling. Be proud. The more we convince popular opinion that homeschooling is great, the less it's going to look odd, the less politicians are going to want to control and interfere in our homeschooling. Follow our strategy if you agree with what we're trying to aim for. Kate says ministerial exams is an option but is not required, correct? You are not required to do any exams. You don't. The only thing you are required to do is to evaluate your child at some point throughout the year, and that can be a portfolio, it can be a evaluation by a certified teacher, and that evaluation by a certified teacher or the school board or anybody else, you can negotiate what that evaluation could be. It could be an interview with you, explaining what your child is doing, showing pictures. It could be you sending a portfolio to one of these people. It could be your child being interviewed. I'm sure there's other options, but whatever you prefer, talk to the person evaluating you and agree on it. The only, the minister exams and the portfolio are the only ones where you don't really get to negotiate. It's like either you do the exams or you don't, and either you send your portfolio in or you don't. You're welcome, Kate. So we'll be sending out a lot of surveys this year. We want to know, the more information we have, the better we can advocate for the community. We found that at the consultation table, some other people had anecdotes, we had data, and that helped us be much more compelling and credible. So I know surveys are kind of boring sometimes and you don't feel like you're special, but the more we have an accurate picture of what is happening, an accurate picture of homeschoolers in Quebec, the better we can advocate for you. And our goal is really not to, we have a lot of unschoolers and we talk a lot about unschooling at AQED because the government struggles more with unschooling. So we've been trying to put it forward a lot more because we want the government to accept unschooling, and every other schooling method. And unschooling is the one that is hardest to accept by formal, people in the system. But AQED equally supports families. If you want to follow the program, we will support you. If you want to do Montessori, we will support you. If you want to do a little bit of everything and Friday something else, we will support you. We feel that parents are the best with their children and their families. Parents are the best. and the closest to the kids, and are the ones who are best placed to be able to determine what the best thing is for them. And the government would have to prove that what the parent is doing is wrong before we would stop supporting a family. And our bar for proof is a lot higher than what many of the judges have accepted. So so that's it. So fill out our surveys, and also if you wish to share and help with our databases of information to understand what is happening and what is being accepted, please CC us on the documents that you sent, or on communications that you sent to the minister, and please CC us or forward us anything that the minister sends to you. We have a specific email address. It is obligations@AQED.qc.ca. Send your documentation to that address, and we will have a sociologist doing the analysis, and everything will be confidential, and we will just analyze at a high level, try to understand trends, try to understand what the minister's reacting to. That's the kind of thing we'll be looking at. There's tons of social media initiatives. Participate. There's thousands and thousands of people who see things because there's friends of friends of friends. So the more you share, the more we normalize homeschooling, the less we'll have to have these kinds of conversations in the future. Meet your M&A. I'd love if there's a volunteer that wants to start a Meet Your M&A day. I really feel like we should do like or Meet Your M&A week. We should do a formal thing that says, like, this week everybody who homeschools meets their M&A, and let's schedule a day and all of the homeschoolers go there. Because I feel like if we did that every year, 10 years from now, when they start looking at the regulations again or whenever, they'll have a very different perspective about how this affects families. AQED is 100% run by volunteers. If you liked our work, donate. Become a member. Become a member is even more important than donating. We want to be able to show the minister that we have a lot of people, that we're representing a lot of people. It gives us more power in our communications when we can say that we are representing 600, 700 homeschooling families. So become a member, and if you really like what we're doing, and if you have a little bit of time, become a volunteer. We have amazing volunteers. We have an amazing team. We have a lot of fun, and we're looking forward to working with you. Any questions? I'd like to thank all the volunteers who worked on this. The list is quite long. Thank you for Beatrice. She's the one who took this project from beginning to end. Without her, I would never have slept. I think she never slept. So the thank yous that people are sharing, share it with Beatrice Mantovani. She was amazing. And thank you to all the other volunteers, to Geneviève Côté and all the other volunteers who participated. You guys have a great evening. If you have any questions, if you need anything, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Talk to your friends. Tell them about this guide. Share the guide. Share your perspectives. Let's try to get everybody in Quebec on the same page so that we can change the regulations over time to really be able to respond to the needs of homeschooling families. Thanks very much, everyone. No, Kate, they haven't given feedback. I've given them the guide. I've sent it to everybody who's on the consultation table, and I know they've received it. The minister's attaché is on vacation, and he told me he was going to read the guide next week. So I'm curious to see what they're going to say next week. a little nervous, but at the same time, I think that's part of the game. I mean, they may not agree with all of our interpretations, but if we all do it anyways, they'll have to decide whether they spend the stamps and annoy us all by sending us a letter to change stuff. So we'll see what happens. It's a year to try. Try our luck, try to pull the cover on our side of the bed. So we'll see. Good question. Any others? Kate, Tammy, you're welcome. Have a great evening. Thank you so much for spending 2 hours with me listening to this. I love working with you guys, so I look forward to this year and seeing how things turn out. Let us know how it goes, and let us know if you need help. Take care. Good night.